Well, noting that it is the appointed time, Carol, do you agree that we have a quorum? And having a quorum, we'll call to order the meeting of the MAP3 Citizens Advisory Board for February 26, 2015. You have been furnished copies of the minutes of the previous meeting in January. Are there additions or corrections to the minutes? Shall we approve them? Been moved and seconded. We approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The minutes are approved. We have in your packet the revenue expenditure report. David, any comments?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have in your packet the MAPS 3 revenue and expenditure report for the period ending January 31st, 2015. And I'll briefly go over this. On the revenue side for the month, there's $9,302,480. For this fiscal year, on the revenue, $65,481,111, with a total of $482,224,470. On the expenditure side, let's see, for the month, there's $4,506,257. For this fiscal year, there's $20,231,946 for the total expenditures in the program of $83,198,355. And you might note that we are 5.7% off ahead on target. Then you also have the MAPS 3 budget and obligations report in your packet. The majority of the convention center is from design, and you ask me each time to kind of hit on major expenditures. We have construction going on with the trails and sidewalks, and park is design also. So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Well, Michael Adams, any comments? We'll always like to start with our financial guy.
No, I don't have any comments or questions. Thank you.
Anyone else? It's been moved and seconded that we approve and accept the revenue and expenditure report. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The report is received. Item 4, David.
Item 4, Mr. Chairman, is recommend resolution approving change order number 3 for the MAPS 3 Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Phase 2 new expo building, an increase of $365,925.58, project M3-F002. This is a change order that predominantly has to do with the building pad, and we've talked about that before. The soil conditions under this building pad are certainly not ideal, and what we're seeing now is as the building was demolished and we stripped that slab off there, we're finding more and more of these areas that need remediation. And what we have on this change order is what we call a geogrid fabric. It's a man-made fabric with kind of looks like one of those orange snow fences that you see around, but it lays in the grade and helps stabilize that pad. Then we have some plumbing fixture revisions, and that has to do with temperature control. And then there's some light fixture replacements that Fairgrounds staff has requested that we do LED. So we do LED lighting out there, and that will continue to keep all of the lighting for the expo building is LED, which is low power consumption and brighter and longer life. This comes with the recommendation from the Fairgrounds subcommittee.
David, I think one of the other points about the importance of keeping that slab so solid is that's actually going to be the finished floor. We're not putting carpet or whatever on it. It's going to be finished concrete, so we just can't afford to have it crack or...
That's right. We don't want any settlement, and we'd certainly like to alleviate any cracking on it. As you said, there won't be any covering on it, so that's the finished product.
Do we think this is the end of the remediation?
I think this is nearing the end. There may be just a little bit more in one area, but I think this, as far as the large items, will be it, assuming we don't dig anything else up. But
and for comfort factor, where does that put us in terms of change orders? And
this puts us at 2.15%. And, we're allowed 10. I believe we budgeted 6%, between 4 and 6% on contingency. So we're still in good shape on this.
Great, thank you.
Bob, any comments from the subcommittee?
No, Alan Brown at FSB made a presentation yesterday to the subcommittee, and it was thoroughly discussed, unanimously recommended.
Further questions or discussion? Shall we approve it? Been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution for change order number 3 for the State Fairgrounds. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. David, item 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pardon me. Item 5 is recommend resolution approving change order number 4 for the MAPS 3 Oklahoma River Phase 3 Whitewater Facility, increase of $477,825.63, project M3-R004/WC-0817/SC-0912. The River Subcommittee asked us to put together a list of what we call add-back items. And those are the items that came out during the value engineering and when we developed this list. And priority 1, and it was prioritized by the Boathouse Foundation and by the MAPS office and by the consultant, a joint effort. Priority item 1 was to get these foundations, which is the predominant item on this change order, the foundations for future lights for the racecourse system. Because of the distance is so limited, the space between the Whitewater and the bank of the river, we need to get those in now, or we'd have to do an alternate type of operation, like bringing in a barge or building a work road or something like that in on the riverside. So this was discussed at length, not only at this meeting, but at previous meetings. And as I said, the predominant item on here is $450,000, $303 for the light pole foundations. There's 2 light pole foundations that will go in. There's also some electrical and mechanical specs that are being brought back in because of seismic design issues. And then at a no cost, there's a contract completion schedule of 16 days, and that's due to the weather that we've had recently. So the contractors asked for additional days to complete it at no cost. So in looking at the add-back items, this being priority 1, and then we also did an analysis to show them where we are budget-wise, the River Subcommittee unanimously has recommended that this be approved to do these for future lighting on the river.
But it does not, this is not an increase in the budget.
That's right. That's right.
Even though they're add-back.
Right. It's add-backs that came out of the value engineering, so we're still within the river budget.
Okay.
Tom, I think that was a really important comment, that we value engineered out more than we were required to, than we needed to meet the budget. And so I think even this body had asked that we prioritize those things that might be able to be added back and to give us drop-dead dates as to when those could happen. And we are at a drop-dead date for these foundations. But there was a lot of discussion. I thought it was very productive, and we made some more difficult decisions, which was to put in the foundations but not to include the actual poles at this time, and revisit it at a later date, and that's going to be complicated too, but it seemed that it might not be a prudent use of those dollars to include the poles right now. At least we'll be prepared for them.
Thank you. Dee, any comments from the subcommittee?
Unfortunately, I wasn't at the meeting, but Mike chaired it.
Mike, any other things?
No, I think it's been covered pretty well. I mean, we have this list of items, and we're trying to get as many of those back in as we can as we go, and I think we're looking at, we still have some contingency left, and there's a few things out there, and as certain things kind of get off the checklist, and it looks like some of that contingency is freed up, then we're adding some of these, trying to add some of these things back in. At this point in time, still staying within the budget. So.
All right. Bob?
Quick question, a matter of curiosity, really, where these foundations go along the river course, where are they located?
they're between the Whitewater and obviously between the bank, and they're sandwiched really close in there, and essentially they're west of the upper basin where the Whitewater facility has, the upper basin we talked about where you come up the conveyor belt. There's one right in that general area, and then there's one further west over by that triangular rafting building. So they're really tucked back in there, and that's what makes them so difficult that in the future you can't get equipment in there, say 5 years from now, you can't get them on the land path in there to do that. That's the whole thinking.
Bob, I think there's sort of two components to this. One is that we'll be able to use this to light the course, of course, at night, so you could do nighttime rafting. But they also, long-term, could complete lighting the entire river. So as funds become available to extend from what we've already done on the river, these will be part of that.
If you recall, in phase 1 of the river project, we did the lighting, and the original plan was to light, I think, 1,000 meters.
Well, phase 4 had additions to that lighting system, and since we've taken that phase 4 money and included it in with the Whitewater, I think that's part of the thinking too, is it's really accomplishing what was originally anticipated.
Yeah. So we had, we only ended up doing 500 yards or meters, I don't remember. 500 meters.
Yes, 500 meters.
500 meters of the course, and so these would be extending, putting the foundations in there to be able to future extend that without having to tear up the course at some point later on to do it. So. And this did, I guess, come with the recommendation of the River Subcommittee. So I would move approval.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the resolution approving change order number 4. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is approved. David, item 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Continuing on with the river, item 6 is recommend resolution approving change order number 5 for the MAPS 3 Oklahoma River Phase 3 Whitewater Facility, increase of $320,701.25, project M3-R004/WC-0817/SC-0912. We produced these items in 2 change orders so that the River Subcommittee could contemplate them individually. This is the kayak building, which is the building that is furthest east up on the hill, and it will be used for storage and for some operations. We put together a worksheet to show the subcommittee where we would be budget-wise. So if you take the remaining budget, subtract out some of the other items like the cost to fill the course with water, the amount we anticipate for that, the rapid blocks that we will purchase, and then also the beginning construction contingency, the original contingency that we have. Deduct those, then we deduct the change order 4 that was just approved here. When you deduct this kayak building, we still have $427,207 that we will use for FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So we have the FF&E budget still intact, and we still have our original contingency amount of over $1 million. Again, this item was discussed at length, and it was decided that it was best that we go ahead with this building and have it constructed now. It will be finished either right at opening or a little bit after opening. There may be some gap in there because of complications, but just as far as constructability. But again, this comes recommended from the River Subcommittee.
Again, it's particularly important because we now have officially been awarded the trials, the Olympic trials, and so having this building complete in a timely manner so that we actually can host this international event was deemed to be really important.
You have also, there was a typo on the resolution, so you have also a amended resolution here, and the typo was down at the bottom. It said change order number 4 instead of change order number 5.
Further questions or discussion? Michael?
I would move approval
Of the amended resolution.
of the amended resolution.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the amended resolution that you have before you. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is approved. Next item, David.
Mr. Chairman, if we could, we'd like to move to item 8, just for continuity here for the project, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. So item 8 is recommend resolution approving preliminary report for MAPS 3 Trail Improvements Phase 2, Project 1, I-44 West Trail Project M3-T002A. If you recall, we did a study for the I-44 trail, and we approved alignment. Council subsequently approved that alignment, and now what you're seeing are the preliminary plans and the engineering for this trail. So we have with us Chris Savage from Johnson & Associates, and what we will do is we'll start at the north part of the trail, and we'll go by thirds because we've broken this into 3 sections. So we'll start at the north and proceed down. So I'd like to turn it over to Chris.
Hi, Chris. I want to remind all of us, we have skipped item 7. We're going to take those in reverse order. This is item 8 on your agenda. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good morning. I am Chris Savage with Johnson & Associates, and as David mentioned, I'll be covering Project 1, which is the northern third of 3 trail projects. We have many miles of trails to cover this morning, so we'll hop to it. This is a multi-use trail that will connect Lake Hefner to the Oklahoma River. So the portion I'm speaking about is the northern third. It's a 10-foot wide, 12-foot wide asphalt trail. As David did mention, it follows the trail alignment that was recommended by the alignment study that was approved in 2014. Total length of Project 1 is 2.5 miles, and the project budget was $3 million. Our current cost estimate at this preliminary stage is $2.8 million, so we're within the budget. Here you can see our proposed alignment. We'll begin at the upper left portion of the image and start at Lake Hefner at Meridian and Northwest Expressway. We'll proceed south to Northwest 63rd, down Northwest Expressway to Portland, south down Portland to Northwest 56th, and make our way south down Grand to Northwest 50th and Grand Boulevard. And we'll look at each of these stretches in a little bit more detail as we move forward. These are the typical trail sections, and these are common throughout all 3 of the projects. This is a 10-foot wide to 12-foot wide asphalt trail. And the 2 images you have in front of you represent 2 different conditions. The one on the left represents where we're in an open area, so we're not adjacent to a street or between any obstructions or anything. So we'll have a trail with a bit of a shoulder on both sides of the trail, and then we'll have the transition back to meet existing grade on both sides. On the right, that image is where the trail is adjacent to the street. So at the left of that image, you can see the street curb and gutter on that section, and then to the right of that image would be the right-of-way for that section. In plan view, so looking from above, this is a typical alignment for Project 1. Most of our trail is adjacent to the street, and so we've located the trail, which is the dark gray strip there, as close as possible to the right-of-way in order to have some separation from the roadway. This also shows crossing several different driveways, and so at most of those crossings we're going to take driveways out and rebuild those in order to meet the accessibility requirements for the trail. This illustrates a couple of areas in Project 1 where we get away from the street and are in an open area, and as such we're able to put a little meander in the trail and have a little bit more of a natural characteristic to the trail. So we'll look in some detail at the alignment. This is at Northwest Expressway and Meridian. We'll begin at the existing parking lot that's at the northeast corner of Meridian and Northwest Expressway. We'll connect to the existing trail that goes around the Lake Hefner facilities there. We'll cross Northwest Expressway on the east side of Meridian and head south to Northwest 63rd. We'll cross Northwest 63rd to the south side of Northwest 63rd at that existing traffic signal, and then we'll head east down Northwest 63rd again on the south side of the street. Going down 63rd Street, we'll cross several driveways, a few shopping centers, some public streets, avoiding quite a few utilities. As you would imagine, in an urban area, there's plenty of utilities to deal with along the route. Along Northwest Expressway, we'll be on the south side of Northwest Expressway. And as I'm sure you're all familiar with that bit of roadway, that's a lot of right-of-way right there. We probably have about 50 feet of right-of-way, and so the trail will be as far away from Northwest Expressway, the roadway, as possible, in order to maintain as much separation between the trail and Northwest Expressway as we can achieve. We do have one drainage structure to cross in Project 1, and that's here on Northwest Expressway. It's just under the N on Northwest Expressway right there. It's a drainage channel. We're putting a pedestrian bridge across that structure. At Portland Avenue, we'll cross Portland Avenue to the east side of Portland Avenue, and the trail will head south there at Messiah Lutheran Church and across several of those office complexes. And at 56th Street, we'll be on the south side of 56th Street and head east over to Grand Boulevard, which is the west frontage road to Hefner Parkway. So at that location, we'll be on the west side of the frontage road as we head south, and then as we get to the residential neighborhoods, you are aware of the ODOT's screen walls that are adjacent to the highway that protect the neighborhood from the traffic and noise of Hefner Parkway. We'll be on the west side of that wall, so we'll be on the neighborhood side of those sound walls, not on the highway side of the sound walls. At that point, we'll hit Northwest 50th Street. We'll cross Northwest 50th Street at the existing traffic signal there, and that will be the end of Project 1. Project 2 will take up right here and head further south. A little bit of right-of-way acquisition to do with Project 1, most of which is temporary. Again, that's for rebuilding driveways and parking lots and what have you as we get into making accessibility and grade separation work. We have one location for permanent right-of-way, which is at Northwest Expressway in Portland, on the east side of Portland at Messiah Lutheran Church, where the sidewalk, the trail, gets into the church's property there. For schedule, we're here with a preliminary report today. We estimate another 60 days to finalize plans and specifications. We'll also begin right-of-way acquisition during that time. We have 3 months allotted for final approvals, bidding process, and award of contract, and then anticipate starting construction in September of this year, and we've allotted a 10-month construction window for the project. That'll have us finishing up, I believe, in July. Dave, would you help me out with that date there? I can't see that screen very well. Okay, it's July, so 2016 was when we'd wrap up construction. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions for Project 1.
Questions? Sue, anything from the subcommittee?
One thing I might remind everyone on this board is this is an urban trail. So it's not around a lake. It's not around, it will be by some parks, but it's a challenge to build a trail like this. And it's new thinking for all of us. So all three of our pieces have really taken into account how to do that. They know better than we. This is new for Oklahoma City, and the committee is excited, and I think all of our developers understand our concern about safety. So that's also foremost on their minds, too, as we develop these plans. So committee did move approval.
Other questions?
As you talk in terms of safety, what about lighting along the trails?
Well, lighting along the trail for Project 1 will be provided by all of the existing street lights adjacent to the roadways. We're totally within the street right-of-way, and so wherever there's existing street lighting, I believe for Project 1, the entire length should be lit.
So the principal safety factor is being contiguous to busy streets and crossing busy intersections. Is that it?
Indeed, that's a challenge.
What's the difference between like a trail around the lake and an urban trail? What's the difference?
You bet. That's a great question. Around Lake Hefner, you're in a natural environment, trees, a little more pastoral setting, no cars whizzing by that you have to pay attention to. Whereas an urban trail, we're right adjacent to, let's say, May Avenue or Meridian Avenue. We're crossing Northwest Expressway. That's a challenge. And so you're around a lot of busy traffic. Really, the predominant concern, of course, is vehicular traffic. So you're adjacent to a roadway, and so wherever we can, we try to be as far away from the roadway as possible. But you're on a path. You are on a path. Same path. Again, it's a 12-foot wide asphalt trail. Have the same feel in terms of the actual trail. Your environment will be totally different.
I might also interject, too, that the use of the trail is multi-use. So it might be for exercise, it might be to take a walk, or it might be to get to a destination. This particular piece is going to have some connectivity to Integris.
That's right. There was a spur that was considered to be extended over to the Integris campus at Northwest 56th Street. So we've met with them, and those conversations are ongoing. They're very excited to be a part of the project.
As with most trails, bicycling will be permitted?
Bob?
Are there rules and regulation like a small motorbike or something like that, or are those permitted on the trails? Or
No, those aren't permitted. It's bicycles, skates, walkers, joggers.
inline skating, I assume?
What was that last?
Inline skating
Yes.
would be permitted, so, okay.
What about people with headsets on? Because when I walk, I put them on, I don't hear a thing. Going through the urban setting, is that going to be a bit of a challenge?
Well, it certainly will, and that is a requirement for the end user to be careful.
Yeah, we don't recommend it.
Okay, I could imagine.
The nice thing is we do have some wayfinding with signage, and so there'll be some recommendations on those signs about the best way to be safe on trails.
I should mention that all the driveway crossings, there's a standard configuration with signage and bollards at every driveway and every public street crossing. There's striping across the street. And then at a major signalized intersection, there's going to be pedestrian push buttons. The signals and the lighting will be phased to allow for crossing of the streets. So there's a significant amount of signage and notification that goes into the trail for those kind of crossings. And as you'll see in Project 2 and Project 3, they have some of those details. You're welcome.
Move approval.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve item number 8 on your agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The resolution is approved. David, shall we move then back in our agenda to item number 7?
Yes, sir. Item 7 is recommend resolution approving preliminary report for MAPS 3 Trail Improvements Phase 2, Project 2, I-44 West Trail, Project M3-T002. So continuing on the same trail, this piece is being designed by MacArthur Associated Consultants. We have Russell Kent here today to go over this piece of the trail, and I'd like to invite him up to explain to you his part of the trail.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. Like David mentioned, my name is Russell Kent. I'm with MacArthur Associated Consultants, and I'm going to be going over the second project, the central section of the West I-44 Trail. Much of what I will discuss is very similar to what Chris talked about just a few moments ago. So with respect to typical sections, drive crossings, some general aspects about the trail, I won't dwell on that too much. As I mentioned, this is Phase 2 of the 8.15-mile West I-44 Trail connecting Lake Hefner to the Oklahoma River. The total construction budget of this section is $3 million. MacArthur Associated Consultants is the design engineer. We're also assisted by Lee Engineering providing traffic design and Howard Fairbairn providing site design. And Again, as David and Chris have both mentioned, this alignment is based on the alignment study report, which was completed last year. And with that, this image shows the extent of the entire trail. The central section is showed in the blue box, beginning at Northwest 50th and ending at Northwest 19th Street, connecting to, obviously, the North Trail at Northwest 50th and the southern part of the trail at 19th Street. A quick overview of the center section, with 2.77 miles in length, beginning at Northwest 50th and Grand and ending at the south side of Northwest 19th Street and Grand. There are three major signalized intersections during this section: Northwest 39th, Northwest 36th, and Northwest 23rd Street. Some of the points of interest as identified in the Trails Master Plan would be Portland Plaza and Will Rogers Park. The construction budget, as I mentioned, is $3 million. We're coming in just a little under that, $2.99 million, based on preliminary design. Again, this is going to be similar to all three sections. This is an image showing a standard trail section, 12 feet asphalt wide section, with space for shoulder on either side. This is a typical street crossing. This particular image would be what we would utilize at a city street crossing. So it may vary for a residential or drive crossing, but at a city street that's non-signalized, we would incorporate ADA ramps as well as a street crossing painted on the street with bollards to restrict vehicular access at those locations. I've split the central section into three, just so we can look at the alignment in a little more detail. As I mentioned, we begin on the south side of Northwest 50th Street, at which point we will follow the existing utility easement, which runs on the west side of the I-44. Well, at that point, it's Lake Hefner Parkway sound wall, between that sound wall and the edge of the neighborhood, the Treadwell Hills neighborhood. This image indicates or shows the beginning of the central portion. That's the Northwest 50th Street intersection looking south. And you can see the beginning of the utility easement there in the center of the picture. This is a typical view of that utility easement. You can see it's between 30 and 50 feet wide, so we have a lot of space for the trail, and we can avoid trees and utilities in this area. The street we're sitting, or the image is taken from, is Northwest 48th Street, and you can see it's a dead-end street, but it is a city street, so we still do have to cross that. People use it to turn around, but it's a lot safer than a standard street crossing. This is just one more image, and you can see some of the utility impacts in that area and some of the things we'll try and avoid with the trail. You can also see the edge at the properties on the right of the image. There is provisions in the preliminary design to look at replacing that fence. That's one item we would consider. Obviously, that people don't always have the same type of fence. Some people don't have a fence at all. So something we would consider is putting a fence along the trail at the property line. The next section of the trail continues on that utility easement all the way to Northwest 41st Street, at which point Grand Boulevard continues, and we'll follow Grand Boulevard all the way to St. Clair, which we'll use to cross Northwest 39th Street or Northwest 39th Expressway on the east side of the road, and then we'll continue on St. Clair Avenue to 38th Street and follow the north side of that street all the way to 36th Street, which we will cross into Will Rogers Park, and then continue on the west side of Grand all the way through the park. The blue box you can see on the north side of on the east side of Grand Boulevard is an area for a potential trailhead parking area. This is approximately the center of the overall trail between the lake and the river. So it's a good location for a parking area and a trailhead. So that's a location we'll be using. There's also a creek through the park, so we will require a pedestrian bridge over that creek. A couple of images of that section. This is the Northwest 39th Street Expressway. You can see the ODOT right-of-way fence. That fence will be reconstructed as part of this project. It's a short section. It'll just ensure that we have a consistent fence alongside the trail to to separate from the traffic. This is the signalized crossing over at Northwest 39th Street. You can see that there is infrastructure in place that will obviously be modified to incorporate the trail section over there. This image is Grand Boulevard looking north towards Northwest 36th Street. You can see the Will Rogers Exhibition Center. You can also see the landscaped area between the parking and Grand Boulevard. We, in the design, we try to avoid impacting that. This street is actually between 38 and 40 feet wide as a two-lane road. So we actually have room to move that existing curb out into the street 5 or 6 feet to allow us to get a trail alongside that landscaping area without impacting it at all. So the curb you see there will be shifted over and the stripes will be repainted to construct 2 standard 12-foot lanes. This is the trailhead parking area I mentioned. On the other side of Grand, you can see the existing trees, and the design incorporates keeping those trees as much as possible, so almost designing the parking around them. You can see that from the next image, how we've got new plantings and also the existing trees built around the parking area. And that parking area will have about 30 spaces, but we have the flexibility to add a few more depending on exactly how much space we have for that parking area. And finally, the last section takes us all the way to 19th Street. We'll continue on the west side of Grand Boulevard, all the way to the south side of Northwest 19th Street, where we'll connect with the southern part of the project. We do have a major intersection at Northwest 23rd Street. We point out that that street is currently being reconstructed as part of the Northwest 23rd Street streetscape. And we've been coordinating with the design engineer and also the City of Oklahoma City just to ensure that what they're doing meshes well with what we have planned. We don't want to rip out the ADA ramps that they're going to be constructed, so they're going to have wider ramps at that location that we can simply tie into when we start construction. This image is taken at the intersection of Northwest 23rd looking south. You can see that there is a Hibden Tire Plus at that location. This just gives an example of where we'll be going. You can see the existing right-of-way line actually runs on the nearest parking areas. So that facility is actually in city right-of-way, so we'll be utilizing some of that area. Obviously, we'll minimize the impact to the business, but we don't require any easement at that location. It's just a case of reconstructing what's there a little bit to allow the trail to pass through. Continuing on, this is at Northwest 27th Street looking south. You can see, again, much like what I described at the utility easement south of Northwest 50th, this is another area where we have made provisions to build a fence alongside the trail. It's, again, something we will consider as we go into design. But there are some areas with no fence, some areas with fences falling apart, and this image kind of illustrates that. The nearest fence is not in good shape. The next home doesn't have a fence at all, so constructing a fence would help to create a separation between the properties and the trail. And this is the end of this part of the project. This is Northwest 19th Street. We will cross over at this location and transition into the southern part of the trail. The schedule, again, mirrors what Chris mentioned, so I won't dwell on it, but the final design will begin after the approval of the preliminary design, with bid opening anticipated in July and construction after that. And we expect to be finalizing construction in the late part of the summer of next year. September 2016 is the anticipated date. And that's it. Any questions? I'll be happy to answer them.
You mentioned the fence a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
What type of fence are you thinking?
Primarily a wooden privacy fence, a stockade fence. Yes. It's an option, and I think...
Is that in the budget?
That's included in the budget, yep. That's included in the preliminary cost estimate. We try to make provisions for the worst case.
And I also noticed there's a landscaping subcontractor, I guess. So what type of landscaping are we talking about?
Primarily in Will Rogers Park, around the trailhead parking, new plantings. You'll notice on that image there was a large area where they would make space for the trailhead signage and also have landscaping around there. So it's primarily in that area. But
What about when the stockade fences with the Oklahoma weather get worn down and
yeah,
ratty?
that's a very good question, and that's why we haven't necessarily recommended it at this point. It's just an option that we'd like to look at. I think there's a number of things like that we need to consider. But we just wanted to make sure we had the funds built into the budget for that, and we can look at the best options, whether it be a stockade fence or a reinforced stockade fence.
In one of your slides, you made reference to chain link fences.
Yes, that's just at one location. That's an existing, there it is, that's an existing ODOT right-of-way fence. So
But you're
we would be
replacing.
required to replace it as is. It's only a short section, it's about 300 or 400 feet. The cost is minimal, and what it'll allow us to do is just ensure that it's all in good shape, and it creates a barrier between the traffic and the trail.
Sue, anything from the subcommittee?
No, move approval of this resolution.
Been moved and approved that we second it. Sue, one question, or Russell as well. There's included in this, in your budget as well, an amount for public art.
Yes.
Could you comment on what you all are thinking about that as we in here?
Sure. Carol, can I do that now, or should I wait? Since
It's later?
since we've moved and approved? I just didn't know if we should vote first and then bring it up?
I think we can have any discussion
Okay,
about it.
perfect.
Go ahead.
We did have a good presentation about the group that did a wayfinding study for the trail system of Oklahoma City area. And through that system, we do have some suggestions on signage. And we're hopeful that perhaps part of that, based on the design look, perhaps it might qualify as art. It looks nice.
Okay.
And it has some interest and some detail to it. So we know that we have to include that. It's 1%, same thing for everyone on
Sure.
your budgets. But that is a piece that may tie things together with the signage and also the art. So we're hopeful that that might work in.
So you all are still discussing that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we have the motion before us, and it's been seconded. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is approved. Next, David?
Mr. Chairman, next is item 9, recommend resolution approving preliminary report for MAPS 3 Trail Improvements Phase 2, Project 3, I-44 West Trail, Project M3-T002B. So this continues and completes the trail all the way down to the river, and we have MKEC and Doug Clausen here to discuss his part of this trail. So I'd like to turn it over to Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We have enjoyed working on this project and will continue. And with that, I'll jump in here. We are covering the southern section of the trail, so we pick up where Russell left off at Northwest 19th and take it on down to the River Trail connection. This is a multi-use trail, be similar to the other typical sections, so I won't go into too many details about that. 10 to 12 foot wide, the alignments based on the MacArthur study. The total length of our piece of the trail is 2.94 miles. Project budget is $3 million, and the current estimate is about just under 2.97 million, so we're also within the budget. Some of the points of interest on this southern section of the trail: Linwood Elementary School is located at Northwest 16th and Grand, and we'll be going by that. We'll be right along State Fair Park for a good share of this trail. We will cross under I-40 at May Avenue, and then the connection to the river trail. This is an overview of the entire alignment. As I mentioned, we'll be coming along Grand. We're going to use the Northwest 16th Street Bridge to cross I-44 to the east side of Grand. We'll come down Grand and then run east along Northwest 10th along the State Fair Park, and then south along May Avenue. We'll be on the west side of May, adjacent to State Fair Park, and then we'll switch over at Reno, and we'll run along the east side of May for the remainder of the section of the trail. And I'll go over these sections. I have them broken up, so I'll go over each section in a little more detail as we go here. This is the north section, and we'll pick up on the south side of 19th Street, where MacArthur stopped their portion of the trail. We'll go along the west side down to Northwest 16th Street, and again, we'll be using that existing bridge to cross there, and I have a detail of that we'll talk about in just a minute. And then we'll run along the east side of Grand Boulevard all the way down and under the existing Northwest 10th Street bridges. These are just some of the details. A few photos here and some details. This is the existing Northwest 16th Street bridge, and as you can see there, it's striped for 3 lanes of traffic. And there is some additional pavement area before you get up onto the sidewalk. And so we'll be utilizing that for bike lanes as well as the existing sidewalk for pedestrians. This is a detail of that crossing. And what we're suggesting is that the bike lanes will be on pavement, and they'll be directional. So for instance, the westbound bicyclists will use the north side of the bridge to cross, so they'll be running with traffic across the bridge. Eastbound bicyclists will use the south side of the bridge to cross, so they're running with traffic, and pedestrians will use the sidewalks. I would mention that ODOT currently has a project to rehabilitate this bridge, and they will be replacing this deck. We have met with ODOT. We've discussed what that rehabilitation looks like and what their deck section will look like. And so, and they have agreed to allow, basically the bicycle lanes will be 8.5 foot wide on each side, and then there will be at a minimum a 5-foot sidewalk on each side of the bridge for pedestrians to cross. So the layout will be similar to what you see here, even though it will be a new deck. This is just a typical section. This is on the east side of Grand looking north, and you can see there is adequate room within the right-of-way to place this trail. In some areas we do move away from the curb a little bit farther. In some areas we're about 15 or 20 feet from the curb where we have room to do so. And this is a detail and a photo showing the crossing at Northwest 10th Street. We will be crossing under the existing bridges. As you can see, there is an existing sidewalk there. However, it's not wide enough to be classified as a trail. So we will be, if you look at the detail, we will be cutting off the concrete slope wall and building a new concrete retaining wall that's vertical to create enough space to allow for the adequate width of the trail. The next slide shows the central section of this trail, picking up at the Northwest 10th Street bridges. And then we drop down and go through or adjacent to State Fair Park, and we're along the south side of Northwest 10th, and then along the west side of May Avenue down to Reno. Just a few details on this. We will be crossing under the UP Railroad Bridge, and one detail I did want to talk about before we get to the Railroad Bridge, at Grand and Gordon Cooper Boulevard, which is within the State Fair Park area, we did have one suggestion for a deviation from the MacArthur report, and they had shown what we call a mid-block crossing at that location, and we're actually suggesting to move that to the intersection so that the users of the trail will cross at the intersection. And we will rebuild some existing islands in the pavement there to create some places of refuge so that they can cross a lane of traffic, look to see that there's nothing coming before crossing the next lane of traffic, and so forth. We just believe this is a slightly safer option for the trail users. This is the west side of May, south of Northwest 10th. In this area, we'll be utilizing the existing sidewalk wherever possible, and we'll be adding, for instance, if it's an existing 6-foot sidewalk, we'll add a 6-foot section of concrete adjacent to that sidewalk, and we have discussed how to try to make those joints as small as possible so they don't cause problems for bicyclists and the like the inline skates. And so some of these areas will be a concrete trail utilizing existing sidewalk. This is one area that I would like to bring your attention to. This is an existing retaining wall, again, west side of May. We're looking north, adjacent to State Fair Park. On the left side there, you can see there's an existing stormwater detention area, and then a berm with lots of trees that were recently planted as part of the May Avenue Streetscape project. And in this location, we're actually suggesting that we split the trail. We have a 6-foot sidewalk below the retaining wall, and what we're suggesting is that we take a 6-foot trail up above the existing retaining wall. And this way we can keep more of those existing trees that were recently planted, and it actually reduces the number of those that have to be relocated from somewhere around 30 to about 10. And so rather than having to relocate a bunch of those that were just planted, it also allows us to use the existing sidewalk as part of the trail. Trail users, there will be signage, and trail users will be asked to be, it'll be split in a directional manner, so that northbound users will use the lower sidewalk and southbound users will use the upper sidewalk. This is the UP Railroad Bridge. There's adequate space under the bridge to place our trail. We will be replacing the existing walk. As you can see, it's not in very good shape, and so we will be replacing that existing walk with our trail.
David, could I ask, quick question about that. If memory serves me, we've had some difficulty crossing under railroad crossings in the past with other projects. Are we already talking to these folks?
We have, and we've started conversation with them somewhat, and there already is an existing sidewalk under there, so I think there's precedent for that. But yeah, we're aware of that, so we will make sure we take care of that.
Good. We want to be able to use it when it's open.
Right.
And then just the south section, this is a quick overview. I will point out at Reno Avenue, we will be crossing, so we'll cross May on the north side of Reno, and then we'll cross Reno on the east side of May. And then the trail will extend along the east side of May all the way down to the connection with the river. Just one photo here, a detail to look at. This is the crossing under I-40, and this actually is looking north on the east side of May, and there is adequate room there with the existing sidewalks to utilize that as our trail crossing. So we won't be making any modifications here other than the pedestrian signals to make sure that those are ADA compliant and we have the push buttons and so forth. Project schedule will run concurrently with the other two projects, the other two sections of this trail. Final plans in June of this year. Construction anticipated to begin in September, and we're anticipating construction completed somewhere around June of 2016. I'd be glad to entertain any questions.
Yes, I want to revisit lighting. I know that you stated in an earlier presentation that you have the street lights in many other sections. In some other urban settings, I have observed that they do have the street lighting, and that had not been adequate, obviously, for those who would use the trails, particularly in the fall of the year, nice days in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And there were lights that were placed along the trail. I have not seen an indication of this. I've looked very closely at the visuals you provided to us, and I don't believe there's really adequate lighting. Now, the committee may have looked very closely at this, But I'm very concerned that we're building space to be used during the day possibly, but when we're not in daylight savings time, if those trails are going to be safe enough to use and be well lit rather than carrying your flashlight with you.
Let me just mention that during the study that MacArthur did, and we had all the public input, and I'm sorry, Sue, all the public input that we had, a lot of comments were that some people were concerned that we were putting trails along their side yards or backyards, didn't want lights that would conflict with their homes. So we're working with neighborhoods and people like the adjacent people along the trails to work that out. We're hoping that there is adequate lighting, as Chris said, along the existing streets, but that's something that we'll have to look at as we finish the actual design of this, and we'll keep your comments in mind, but just be reminded there are some people who don't want the light on them.
Is there, could you make the light somewhat directional? I mean, to where it is focused kind of away from the homes and
The big overhead lights have
yeah, is it
lower lighting.
something that has kind of a, yeah, you know what I mean, as far as directional on the
We
trail?
can, somewhat, yeah. It's just that there's a lot of lights in a lot of places. So we'll work through that and take that into consideration.
But is lighting part of our trail plan, or is that a city project?
Well,
in addition to this?
if we're going to do it as part of the trail, it would have to be in our budget. I don't think that the reports that you've seen today actually show that as part of it, and we'll have to see how that can shake out during design, or final design.
The lights that I have seen along many trails, they're not very high. And I'm sure that our engineers and designers, they can look at that, and I can certainly appreciate the property owners do not want light in their, and again, that's something we should have thought about. But my concern would be the use, we're investing taxpayers' dollars, and we may have trails available for use during certain hours of the day.
Sue, any comment about what your subcommittee is thinking about that?
Well, we have talked several times about lighting. So again, we have hopes that the budget will allow for that. And the committee did move approval of this resolution. So move approval.
Is there a second?
I had another question.
Excuse me just a second. There's a second.
Yes,
All right. Move to second. Go ahead, Mike.
Could you talk a little bit about the connection, what's going on at the river? Whether you're having trail access, parking,
Yes, yes.
how we get to the trail?
Yes. As you can see on this slide, there is a parking area proposed, be very similar to the one that Russell had shown earlier, 30 spaces. We have included in the budget some lighting, which would be basically a solar type, light for the parking area itself. And we also have included the budget a small shelter, like a prefabricated, 4-pole type shelter area for, if the weather gets bad or if you're trying to meet someone there. It's a place where you could wait that would be out of the elements. And then the actual connection, as you can see here, we've kind of got a split connection to the existing river trail, and to make it easy to get on and off of that trail, so that, again, kind of directional type, design, so that those coming off the trail have a nice curve to come up to the north and get to the trailhead parking area. Does that
Further
answer your
discussion?
question?
And are we planning anywhere along the route of the trail, any sort of restroom facilities or anything along that line?
No, we're not. With this being an urban trail, there are opportunities for,
Some of the businesses will be
yeah.
used, I suppose.
Refresh my memory on the rationale for these trails when it was proposed. I was not here on the advisory board.
Well, this follows the recommendation from the Trails Advisory Board on location of trails. That's about all I can tell you, because I wasn't here either, but I know that comes from as I said, the Trails Advisory Board wanting to have a combination of different types of trails. We have the river trails. We have the West River Trail that we're doing that is certainly different than this. And then this being an urban trail, as Sue was mentioning, it can also be used as a path for people to even get to work downtown. If you live northwest, and you could use this trail all the way down to the river and come along the river and then back up, and you could get downtown that way on bicycle without being on city streets.
Gloria, I thought about this in the beginning as being the MAPS 3 piece of the trails as being kind of the connector of all the other trails. I mean, we had existing trails, and we had a master plan that was presented to us early in the process. And at least the way I thought about it was we were trying to provide the connectivity to other trails that existed to have ultimately to have a complete interconnected system. And that's kind of the goal, I think. And as far as your comments about the lights, I think your points are well taken. And I just say that we're approving today the preliminary plan, and we're going to get a chance, according to his schedule, I think in June, to look at the final plans when David's telling us they will have taken that into account. And so I would want you to feel okay about the fact that we're going to get another opportunity to look at the final plans, and I'm sure your comments and Michael's will be taken into account by Sue and her committee. So with that, we have a motion and we have a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is approved. That brings us to item 10. David?
Well, we're going to switch gears from trails, and we're going to go back to sidewalks here. So item 10 is recommend resolution approving preliminary report for MAPS 3 sidewalks Phase 3 improvements, project M3-W003. This is the first piece of sidewalks with the additional money that we were granted, and we have MacArthur Associated Consultants also here, and again, Russell Kent will give you information on his sidewalk preliminary report. So I'd like to invite him up again to tell you about his sidewalks.
Well, Russell, if we weren't too hard on you the first time, welcome
Try
back.
to make this one a lot quicker. How about that? Thank you again, and good morning once again. This is the Phase 3 of the MAPS 3 sidewalks projects. This is a continuation of the improvements that were included in Phase 1 and also Phase 2, Phase 1 being by Smith Roberts, and Phase 2, Cardinal Engineering with the design engineer. The total project budget for this phase is $4.5 million, and as you're aware, the alignments are based on the weighted ranking, which was presented in the Sidewalks Master Plan. An overview of Phase 3, we're beginning at weighted rating number 41, based on obviously continuing what was constructed in Phase 1 and 2. The preliminary report includes a total of 10 alignments at 10.4 miles of sidewalks. The MacArthur Associated Consultants is the engineer, and we are assisted by TEC, Traffic Engineering Consultants, for the traffic portions of that. Based on the preliminary design, the preliminary construction estimate is $3.5 million. Here is a quick overview of the alignments. As I mentioned, we start at 41 and move on down. As you're aware, and what we'll get into as I go through this report, all these sidewalk alignments across the city were rated, and they were ranked from 1 to over 200. Primarily, they were based on location of the sidewalk, based on need, but also constructability and feasibility. So as you'll see as we progress, as those numbers start to get higher, there's a higher possibility that the constructability issues become greater. This is just a map showing there's a quite large spread across the city. The northernmost alignment on this is just north of Memorial on Penn Avenue, and the southernmost alignment is at Southwest 89th Street. Just as I mentioned, I'm going to go through in the next few slides some of the design considerations we've had. The preliminary stage of this report would be identifying some of these considerations, identifying the costs associated, and so we can identify how much sidewalk we can construct. And, of course, in the final design, we will go back to each of these design considerations and figure out exactly how we're going to construct that. So some of these items might include the extension of existing storm sewer, slope stability issues, construction of retaining wall, utility relocation, identification of easement requirements, and also the upgrade of signalized intersections to provide pedestrian access. Here's just a couple of photos illustrating that. This is alignment 49, which is on Southeast 44th Street. This picture is looking south. This is just east of Acres Park, if you're familiar with that area. There's an existing storm sewer that runs under the street and into a channel. You can see in the image it's not enough room for the sidewalk, so that would require extension by approximately 5 feet, and we would have to reconstruct that and replace the handrail to allow the sidewalk to pass. This is alignment 58, North Penn Avenue. Again, this is looking north towards Waterford Boulevard. And this is an area that would require the construction of retaining wall. There is enough right-of-way there. The right-of-way line is at the backside of the parking lot on the back of the curb, but we would require a 2 to 3 foot retaining wall along this area. Also, we'll have to pass utilities. There's an existing wall. There's 2 flumes you can see there, and they're just some of the challenges that we'll have to address as we move into the design. Utility impacts, obviously that's something that's prevalent throughout these alignments. This particular image is at Northwest Penn and 5th Street looking north. This is alignment 47. You can see there's a power pole and also a fire hydrant rather close to a building. In most locations, not this particular one, but in most locations you don't have a building, so we can typically go around utilities. But something like this, we may have to look at it a little more closely and come up with a solution to get around there. This is alignment 41, looking south. You can see the existing drainage channel. Slope stability has been an issue on previous sidewalk projects and also on some of the trails projects, such as the River Trail, erosion problems. So we're trying to identify those areas and make sure that there is money in the budget for slope stability and items to prevent erosion. And also some of the existing facilities that we have. This image is Northwest 50th Street. This is alignment 55. This is the bridge going over I-235. This particular bridge is being replaced as part of the ODOT project to upgrade the I-235 and Broadway intersection. So we're making sure we're coordinating with ODOT to find out what's going on. In this particular example, they are going to be replacing the bridge and constructing a 6-foot sidewalk on the north side and also the tie-ins on either side. So we just want to make sure that we know where their project will end and we will tie in appropriately and not recommend that we're going to construct a sidewalk which then they will rip out and replace. We just want to make sure we tie in. And that goes for a number of areas which are under construction or about to be under construction. We want to make sure we're aware of all of those. So moving forward, after the approval of the preliminary design, we will move forward with the final design, and with the scheduled completion of June of this year, with the bid opening shortly after in July. And it's about a 9-month construction period, so we look to finish in the summer of next year, the summer of 2016. This is just a very quick summary of what I mentioned. Total of 10 alignments included in the preliminary report, 10.4 miles of sidewalks, with the construction cost estimate at the preliminary stage of $3.5 million. And that is all. Any questions?
Sue, any comments from your busy committee?
No comments. We're just tickled to bring, again, more sidewalks.
Great. Any questions?
I had a question. We talk about looking at the schedule of the alignments there, and I know we rank these in order, but look like some of them are being skipped, and I guess I'm curious as to what happens to the ones that look like they're skipped, and have we really completed 40 projects to date, or were there some skipped in the earlier phase?
Oh, Michael Adams, I'm so glad you asked that. I was waiting for you to ask that question, number guy.
Some of the alignments appear to be skipped because there's other entities using our list and building sidewalks. Public Works is doing some with the fund balance money and some other monies that they have. So that could be, and probably is, the reasons why those are skipped in there.
So the first 40 are being addressed, not all by maps.
And
the next, the ones in this gap are also
The
being...
majority of the first 40, because there is some other projects mixed up in there too. But we are attacking the list numerically.
Okay. Thank you.
Move approval.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution provided for in item 10 relating to sidewalks. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is approved. Thank you, Russell.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 11. Any member of the Citizens Advisory Board have any new business that they want to bring forward? How about you, David? No, sir. All right. Item 12, then, is the Citizens Advisory Board Subcommittee reports. I know for sure that there's a lot of work going on with consultants and others in the absence of some meetings of the other subcommittees, but the work of those subcommittees continues to go forward. Any subcommittee have any comments they want to make? All right.
I'll make a comment. The River Subcommittee did meet this week, and we got a report on what a lot went on, but a couple other things that were announced, I guess, and I think Councilman Sawyer mentioned it briefly, but Mike Knopp announced that the city had been awarded Olympic trials for the 2016 Reno Olympics. So those are scheduled, I think, mid-May 2016, I believe. So we kind of have a hard date. We need to get this thing finished and operational in that time frame. The other thing, I think there was an announcement at Rotary Club, the Downtown Rotary Club in Oklahoma City has taken on a project as part of the Whitewater facility, and they're going to build a stage, they're calling it Rotary Point, within the Whitewater facility. So this is a sponsorship they've taken on one of the little points there. They're going to build a stage that will be used for award presentations, concerts, general activities there at the Whitewater facility. So we look forward to that addition to the Whitewater facility.
Thank you, Mike. I was at Rotary and heard the presentation, and I think it will be a $275,000 commitment that the Rotary Club is making to further enhance the river project. And it's I think it may be the first of other entities that want to participate, and obviously fulfills our goal of spurring other financial investment by other entities, and that's kind of one of the big goals of MAPS, and it's always good to hear that it's working. And so that's a great announcement, Mike, and I appreciate it. Any other subcommittee? All right, then. Informational item, David?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there's an informational item on here, one item, and it is the purchase of some right-of-way on South Penn for sidewalks, and that's gone to council.
Okay, any questions about that informational item? All right, then that brings us up to David's summary and report. David?
Yes, sir. I'll just give you a quick update on what all's going on with various programs. So at the river, we know that the Whitewater facility is under construction. We had discussions on that, and Phase 2 improvements are wrapping up down there. Senior Wellness Centers 1 and 2 are both in design, and those are well underway. A lot going on with trails and sidewalks, as you saw today, but also what we have out in the field. We have Phase 1 Project 3 is under construction, and that's nearing completion. We have Phase 1 Trails Project 1 and 2, which is the West River Trail, is under construction. And then we have Phase 2 Project 1 under construction. You saw the preliminary report for Phase 3 sidewalks, which are in design. And then we have the Phase 2 I-44 design that you saw also today underway. Convention Center is in design, and lots of work being done. As you mentioned, maybe not having meetings this month, but a lot of work being done by the consultants. fairground, the expo building is under construction, and that one is making significant progress. Park design for the upper park is underway, and coordination for utility relocation. And then the streetcar preliminary design is underway, and the RFP process for the streetcars themselves is underway. So we have a lot going on.
Wonderful. Any questions for David? All right, then. That brings us to item 15. Any comments by board members?
I have a comment.
Sue.
I'd just like to wish Michael Dover again speedy recovery. I know he's recouping, and I'm sure he's watching us on Channel 20. So he's missed, and we'll see him soon. David did some kind of little video, I called it an infomercial, on the whitewater that I saw online, and I thought it was well done, and kudos to you for a good job on that. So we had talked about information going out, and it looked like that was a good first step on that. And then the other thing is we got to get our calendars ready, because in 2016, we're going to have a lot of celebrations, so keep that in mind.
Well, I'm actually working up into a really good celebrating kind of a mood, so I'm on track. How about the rest of you? Well, it does look like 2015-16 will be big years for us, and so a lot of exciting stuff going on. Anything else from staff, David? Okay, we'll just keep all this rolling on the river. Okay. All right, this is the opportunity where citizens are invited to comment. We have a citizen here that would like to be heard today. If not, that brings us to time for adjournment. Anyone want to move for that? Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor say aye. We're adjourned. Thank you for coming.